We are live by voice. Why is that camera not coming in? Oh, no. What's going on?
Testing, can everyone hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. There's just no visual.
Okay, he's working on it.
Testing,
One
test.
second.
1, 2, 3.
They have a meeting. That's why you're important.
I figured that out. I just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah. Yes,
This is be simple to the third. I was sure who the third was.
Yes.
So I figured you needed 2.
yeah. Well, just as long as it's.
Yeah.
So it's 3 to a committee, no more
Yes.
than, no more than.
Could hear you.
Not a secret. Just educating Mr. Traver. And education never ends, right, Doctor?
Never ends.
Old dogs can still learn new tricks.
I'll get the camera going with another camera or something.
Say it again.
When it started, everything's working except for the camera. I'll get another camera going.
So even if they start presenting, they'll be able to see,
Maybe here.
oh, yeah. It's up to you guys.
2 minutes, Sam?
Yeah, we'll
Pam?
wait it out.
2 minutes?
Because they have a presentation.
For those of you waiting.
Oh, I see movement.
All right,
I have a visual.
perfect.
Yeah, visual.
So we're ready to start, Tim?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a call to order to the Personnel and Contracts Committee on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 at 6:30. We're a little late, but we're at Central High School. Please ignore my voice. I have allergies, so don't judge me. First, we would like to acknowledge our staff. Thank you to our staff for attending tonight, but also to acknowledge board member Ms. Cashmere. And I believe JS is Mrs. Sokolovic. He's probably doing double duty tonight. And to all the other staff that are here. We're going to get started. So the first agenda item is approval of meeting minutes, which are from February 28th, 2023.
So I move to accept the minutes.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Mr. Traber abstains. Motion carries. The next one is approval of meeting minutes from March 28th, 2023.
Move to accept the minutes.
Moved by Mr. Traber, seconded by me, Bobby Brown. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Mr. Traber abstains. Now we'll move on to the next item, which is presentations of Board of Education Department directors, supervisors on their functions within the district. The first one is specialized instruction.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for not having a visual presentation. I was asked to provide for you all a formula for how a child becomes eligible for special education. There isn't a formula for how a child becomes eligible for special education, but I do think it's important to explain what that process looks like. So I will just kind of walk through what that looks like. As you know, when a child is having trouble in school, it's important for us to find out why, because the child may in fact have a disability. And by law, schools must provide special education services to help the children with disabilities. There are a couple of ways that that process is initiated. Step one, a child is identified as possibly needing special education and related services. This could be prompted under child fine, where each state is required under IDEA to identify and locate and evaluate children with disabilities. And oftentimes it's a referral, a formal referral or request for evaluation that is made that can be prompted by school professionals and or families that are concerned about a child's learning. The next step would be, in fact, to evaluate the child. It is comprehensive. It is made up of, there is a team, an interdisciplinary team that takes a close, comprehensive look at the areas of concern. The evaluation is the essential step to the special education process, and it's intended to answer questions. Questions like, does the child have a disability that requires the provision of special education and related services? What, in fact, are the specific educational needs, and what special education services and related services are appropriate for addressing the needs? Once the child has been gone through a battery of evaluations, the team comes back together, usually after 45 days, and determine if the child is eligible. There is a review of evaluations, and there are even checklists that the state provides in the various areas that we may be looking at. Once the child is, in fact, found eligible for services, the team will go into the planning phase. Once the team determines goals and objectives in the area in need of improvement, it's essential for the team to begin to design a program. And sometimes the program lends itself to a special place, a special type of classroom, or alternative settings. Sometimes it's really just providing additional supports in the generalized setting. It really is individualized, and it's something that is reviewed on an annual basis. That team develops what we call an IEP, and the goals and objectives and the program that is determined is discussed in that meeting and memorialized in an actual document. That document is shared with all of the individuals that work closely with the child and family, and their progress is monitored on a quarterly basis. And the students' progress is reviewed annually to determine or set new goals and objectives based on a student's progress during the time from the time that the child is evaluated and deemed eligible for special education services, and then again reevaluated after 3 years to determine further eligibility. That really is how a student is deemed eligible for special education services. It is, again, it can be prompted in a variety of ways. It takes about 45 days from start to finish, and it is something that we are monitoring annually to ensure that the student is making adequate progress. With that being said, there are times that students may struggle, or we have decided as a team that maybe we haven't been probing and focusing on some of the right things. So collectively, we come back to the table and determine new goals and objectives that really hone in on what the child needs. There are times that families also prompt teams in moving in that direction as well. They're a part of the team, so that's quite all right. But does that answer the overall question? I know that based on the email that I received, I understand that there may be more, but I wanted everyone to be clear that it's not a particular formula, it's more about a process.
So thank you for presenting. This item was brought to our attention by Ms. Casimir. So I'm going to open up the floor for Ms. Casimir to respond if this meets what she was looking for through these presentations. Go ahead, Ms. Casimir.
Yes, thank you. And it absolutely does meet what I was looking for through the presentation. So that just jogs one question. Does it happen, or how often does it happen that the Bridgeport School District is not equipped to handle a special education student's needs and that student has to be transferred out of district? Does that happen often or at all?
Yes, it does. And if you are looking for data regarding the amount of students that are placed out of district, that is something I can certainly provide to you. Our goal, first and foremost, is to ensure that students are receiving supports and services in the least restrictive environment. The least restrictive environment would be their general ed setting, right? We want to keep them on home base. We want to give them as close of an opportunity to what their typical peers would receive. With that being said, we realize that there are some students that require, their needs may be a little bit more comprehensive and extensive, and they require supports that go above and beyond what we can provide on site. And sometimes we have to look outside the schools to provide what it is that students are looking for. So yes, it does happen. I can't tell you in this moment the percentage. I can tell you, if you would like for me to come back to as a follow-up, the total number of students that we've had this year. I think it's also important to also keep in mind that we're constantly monitoring and keeping an eye on our students that may not necessarily be on our campus, because the goal is always to see them transition back. So for some of our students, a good number of our students, it's a short period of time for students to receive that extra support. Sometimes it's, the need for a more therapeutic setting or something of that nature.
Okay, yes, I definitely like to see those numbers. There's no rush, just whenever you can get them. And I'm sorry, I know I said one question, but I have one more quick one. For the students that are aging out, so I know that once a special education student turns 18, that they are legally, an adult according to this country's eyes. So even if that student is very low functioning and needs 24-hour care, the parent still has to go to probate court to get plenary guardianship over that student. So what my question is do you have some type of workshop with the parents where you invite the probate court staff down so that they can go over, legally, like how they obtain guardianship once the child turns 18 and is still in school or not?
That is a very good question. I have not been asked that question, and it is not something that has been on my mind in terms of facilitating. But I'm always open to supporting and ensuring our parents are getting something that they need. So that is something I would love to collaborate further with you on. We do provide services to students up until 22.
Right.
So a lot of the conversations as it's related to that population is more about what is being put in place to ensure that students are going to be self-sufficient and or have access and experiences that set them up for employment. And those are things that we're focusing a lot of energies on to, develop something that is even a little bit more robust for our students. I'm excited to say, but that has not been a focus and definitely something I could work on facilitating for families.
Yeah, and that's something that the Norwalk School District did when my autistic son, before he turned 18, that's something that they did for the parents in the district. And I cannot tell you how helpful that was to have, the probate court staff come in and do a presentation. So I would be happy to help with anything. I'm not the type of person to just make suggestions and don't think about the details. So I'd be more than happy to help out with that process in any way that I can. So please keep that in mind. And thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough and I understood everything you said.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have one more question. Mr. Traber, would you like to ask any questions?
Yeah, I actually have a few questions. You described the actual process that leads to an IEP, but there is a process that precedes that before you ever get there. Can you give us a brief overview of what that process is? The sort of analysis of what a child might need. Do they need special ed? Is there other things we could provide them?
Sure, very good question. So before you even come to the table to talk about or make recommendations for special education, we as a school team should be looking at interventions, right? Early interventions are critical, and that could be in the area of academic or social behavior. Sometimes students kind of hit a roadblock due to lack of exposure. Right? Sometimes we recognize that they may need a little extra practice in an area. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's a disability that is warranted. Those are things that should be put in place with monitoring the student's progress and ideally communicating with families every 6 to 8 weeks so that we're all on the same page about how that child is progressing. It's after those interventions have been put in place and things have been exhausted that we realize there's something else underlying here. And that then prompts a more comprehensive look and a variety of team members, special education teachers, psychologists, a variety of related service folks to come together along with the general ed teacher and our parent to analyze and review what has been done up to this point and try to get to the root of why it's not happening. And the intervention should be taking place really at all age groups, all levels. It could be in, pre-K, kindergarten to, concerns in high school. Sometimes there are things that, emerge later. And a lot of times it could be due to a lack of exposure. We want to make sure that we are able to determine that it is that and provide students an opportunity to catch up rather than confuse that with an underlying disability that might impede a student's learning.
So as a follow-up to that, because that's my experience, what you just described, would we not benefit from more interventionists, both paraprofessional and certified staff?
Yes, I think there's always a benefit. The question that I always pose is, how are those individuals going to be utilized, right? It's one thing to suggest, the need for maybe more paraprofessionals, but I think in order to make the gains we're hoping to see, we have to be really intentional and clear about what that individual will do when they're working with that child for whatever reason, whether it's academic or behavior. And as far as interventionists, are you talking about just having more in the district? Because sometimes the individuals that service our students also step into the role of interventionists. There's just a variation in what they are providing. And by that, I'm talking about your general ed staff. I'm not necessarily talking about special ed.
A lot of it falls on the general ed staff, right?
Mhm.
At that stage. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about is, in my experience, we don't have the academic or the social interventionist certified staff. And we have always been short on paraprofessionals. And I'm assuming since I left 3 years ago, it's gotten worse during COVID with all the stories about the openings we have and the inability to hire people. So what I'm looking at is, as we go into this week's hearings with the city and the discussions up at the state, what we're looking at is what we might lose. But I'm also looking at what we could do if we had more money to provide the needs, because it's my experience discussing with people in other districts, and Ms. Casimir mentioned Norwalk, which is one I just recently heard about myself, that they have more options to give kids. And so if you can get that child in second grade when they're having a difficulty and we've identified it, and provide them extra tutoring in reading or math or extra counseling because they're going through an emotionally difficult time, we can get them over that hump and keep them moving forward. Then they're not going to keep falling behind and further behind. And so it's just my observation, or after 20 years in the school system, that we don't have those options. And it would be nice if we could. And it's nobody's fault here in this room. I recognize that. I don't mean that critically of you. It's my observation of us not having the resources that we need to do the job we'd like to do for those kids. So I just wanted to underscore that's an area where we could really use, additional resources. And I would agree with you that we'd have to make sure that we weren't wasting any resources. But in talking to colleagues from other communities in this state that are not urban, that's the story I hear over and again. They identified the need of a child. They took care of it within 3 months or 6 months. That child caught up with their peers and continued on to a happy life. And if we could do that kind of thing, just think how much better our kids would be. So I just wanted to underscore that need, and just underscore also how difficult the job is that you all have to do.
Yes. Thank you for underscoring that.
Thank you. I have no further questions. I always enjoy the presentation, and I'm glad that, committee members are, seeing the importance of the work that you do. Not saying that they didn't, but just understanding it a little bit more in detail. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to the next one. Is everyone okay with this?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next presentation is early childhood. Yes.
I provided a PowerPoint, so there's no PowerPoint. Arlene, I can send it to you.
We have it on the agenda. Can you pull up?
No, I have it on my phone. Yes.
Just 1 second. We're getting the PowerPoint together.
Yeah. 50 years ago, the allergy period from mid-April to mid-June.
But yeah,
Because of global warming. So yeah, I walk around with these halls and like all the time. Dying.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening again. My name is Melissa Jenkins. I serve as Chief Academic Officer. I'm presenting an update on the Early Childhood Director position. This position is currently vacant and the role and responsibilities for the Early Childhood Director is currently being filled by a part-time consultant. But at one point in time, about 2 years, 3 years ago, I did serve in this position, so I can provide an overview. Ms. Perrin provided a variety of questions that would be you would want to have answered, but the heading stated that there was a request to understand the functions.
Correct.
So I will answer the questions in the parentheses as well as provide an overview of functions. So there are a variety of functions, but they revolve around these 6 areas for early childhood, recruitment. Early childhood is funded by a grant from the Connecticut State Department Early Childhood Office called School Readiness and Smart Start. So there is some grant management involved. So I'm going to provide an overview of our accreditation of each preschool location. Give an overview of the health and safety requirements that the director supervises, teaching and learning, and collaboration with families and community. Recruitment, attendance, and family fees are major components for the early childhood department. So the early childhood director manages the grant, the parent fees that are paid, as well as any Care for Kids applications, which is a subsidy from the state. The Connecticut Early Childhood Office calls it the 3-legged stool, that the funding for early childhood is based on these 3 legs. Currently in Bridgeport, we probably work on 2 of those legs because the subsidy for Care for Kids, while it's available for all families to apply for, there's almost like a sweet spot. You have to have a moderate income and so many children to be eligible for the subsidy. So if your income is high, you're not eligible. If your income's very low, and then like there's this sweet spot. So families may apply, but they may not be awarded the subsidy. Currently in the district, we only have 4 families receiving the subsidy. Most of our families are below the 75th percentile in regards to the state median income. And that's why we received the grant. So most of our salaries for the grant are paid through, teacher salaries are paid through the grant. Paraprofessionals are paid through the grant primarily. We use parent fees that are collected on a sliding scale to provide for CPR training, materials for the classrooms, classroom tips, trips, playground upgrades. In the PowerPoint, it says that we serve currently about 700 children through the School Readiness and Smart Start grant program. There are other children that are serviced through special education through our site with Skane School. To maintain grant reimbursement, because we don't just get the money from the state all at once. The preschool classrooms need to maintain enrollment of 15 to 18 students, and students must attend school. So if your name is on the roll, but you're not in school, you still don't get reimbursement. So the preschool director, the early childhood director, has the responsibility of recruiting children when enrollment decreases and maintaining favorable attendance. So we get the $600 per month per student. So, yes, sir.
So if it slipped below 15, do you lose the one student or do you lose all 15
You only lose for one, so you don't collect the $600.
for that student? Yes.
But we do a pretty good job.
No, I'm sure you do.
So parents and families pay a monthly fee, and it's based on a sliding fee schedule. So when parents enroll in the district, they provide like W-2 forms or evidence of their income. The clerical staff in the office goes through and identifies the fee and communicates that fee to the family. We are working on making it automated. Currently, most of this is done by hand, but we are looking for automated ways to help parents pay their fee rather than getting money orders. Families may apply for Care for Kids, which I mentioned, and if they meet that criteria, most of the time the fee is eliminated. But currently for Bridgeport Public Schools, there are only 4 families that are receiving the Care for Kids subsidies. So we got a wobbly stool. I can do this. The next area in which the Early Childhood Director supports is managing grants. And so there's a monthly monitoring of enrollment of preschool students and filling open spaces so the grant reimbursement can occur. Working with school staff to make sure preschool students attend school. And every year, there are at least 5 preschools that go through NIAC accreditation. If we do not pass NIAC accreditation, we do not get grant reimbursement. So, so that's important. We do have some part-time consultants that help work with the teachers in the school to make sure we're meeting NIAC accreditation. And we report our accreditation to the State Department annually to maintain our school readiness and Smart Start funding. Additionally, I had mentioned that there's a registry of all staff. So part of monitoring the grant, the State Department monitors our staff to make sure they have in that registry their professional development, such as CPR, administration of meds, so many hours of literacy professional development. We maintain that they're checking their registry and keeping their registry current. If that doesn't occur, the State Department, sends us an email to make sure that our staff, including teachers and preschool staff, are current in their professional development and training. And then every month we submit monthly reports about family fees, enrollment, and recruitment to the State Department. And because it's not all automated, it takes a little while for that to happen. I mentioned NIAC accreditation. All of our preschool sites, all 22 are NIAC accredited. It takes almost a full year to prepare. There are 10 standards, relationships, curriculum, teaching, assessment, health, safety, staff competencies, family, community relationships, making sure the physical environment, leadership and management. So when we go through NIAC accreditation, the teachers are constantly reflecting and improving their practice based on those standards. Each teacher builds a classroom portfolio. Each school builds a site-based portfolio. We make sure that we're teaching children at that time and they maintain it. Good hand washing protocols. How do we partner with families? How do we make sure, like even our playgrounds, when NIACA comes, they come and measure our playground. making sure they're fenced in. So I just making sure the playgrounds are up to code. And so it's a live assessor. Somebody flies in from outside the state, and this occurs at least every 5 years for all of our sites. If our sites are not NIAC accredited, they go through a process called ECHRS. There's a screening where someone in the state comes down to evaluate the classrooms. They're probably the most evaluated classrooms in Bridgeport. But it's all toward providing safe, healthy environments and relationships for children. In regards to health and safety specifically, we communicate and maintain the ratio and supervision guidelines for children. So there are 18 children in classroom. They're on a playground as an example. One child needs to go to the bathroom. Either the parent or the teacher must bring 9 children inside. You can't bring one child inside and leave the other. So that supervision and ratio is important. It's reviewed with teachers. They reflect on it 3 times a year. The school leaders are aware. So if somebody's absent in that preschool classroom, the school leader knows they have to provide coverage for those preschool children, because we can be evaluated at any time. Someone from the state can walk in and check ratio and supervision unexpectedly. We maintain playground quality and safety, monitor with Care for Kids health and safety standards. So there are a variety of health and safety standards. Yes, sir.
Care for Kids, they monitor just the sites where they're Care for Kids recipients, or do they monitor all your sites?
Currently, they're only monitoring the 4 sites, but previously, I allowed them to do it all because it was another layer of evaluation. But Care for Kids needs all of our people, parents and teachers, to be fingerprinted digitally. The state is backlogged on digital fingerprinting. So we had to pull out temporarily and only fingerprint at the 4 schools, because getting access to that digital fingerprinting is difficult, and releasing the teachers to go to the state barracks was challenging. But we will be working to fingerprint everyone so we can have Care for Kids available at all of our sites. So that is something we are working on this year. Facilitates and responds to feedback from school readiness monitoring. And so there's a school readiness director in-house. She monitors how we process parent fees to make sure accuracy. She monitors how we process students' health records, and she monitors teaching and learning in the classroom. So based on that feedback, we have to make adjustments. So we're always making adjustments, refinements, and enhancements to preschool. We collaborate with the school nurses to make sure children have the appropriate vaccines. We collaborate with the school nurses and families to provide vision, hearing, and dental screenings. All teachers are CPR trained. All paras are CPR trained. Next year is a CPR training year for the majority of the staff. We provide administration of medication every 3 years. So that's only to teachers. Paras do not administer medication as needed. And annually, all the teachers are EpiPen trained. Yes, trained on how to use EpiPens, even if they do not have a child in their classroom. Right, we are expected to do that. Okay. The early childhood director facilitates teaching and learning. We develop lessons with teachers based on the early learning development standards. So lesson plans revolve around language and literacy, gross motor, fine motor skills, cognition, social emotional learning, mathematics, fine arts. We have dramatic play stations in the classroom. There's music. We hope there's some dancing going on too. science, and social studies. We also facilitate the administration of 2 assessments, the Brigance 2 to 3 times a year, which is a screener in regards to academic skills. But the observational assessment is called Connecticut DOTS. It's an observation of all 8 areas that are listed above. And professional development is provided throughout the year to teachers based on those NIAC standards, grant criteria, teacher need, and most importantly, student need. And the last area that is highlighted, the early childhood director facilitates collaboration with families and community. With the NIAC accreditation process being one of the largest external context, birth to 5 supports. So if a student enters preschool and the student demonstrates some need, as Mrs. Johnson had described, we are responsible to partner with families to make sure students' needs, developmental needs, are met. If a child has a language delay, if a child is, struggling with walking, hopping, balance, fine motor, social emotional, with, self-regulation, we're responsible to collect data, provide interventions as Mrs. Johnson described, and if needed, engage with the family to call a PPT, a planning and placement team meeting, to determine if further evaluation is needed. So we provide birth to 5 supports. We collaborate with Skane Consultation Center, and parents know that this is available to them through the family handbook that's provided to all families upon registration. We collaborate with the community preschool providers. There are about, I would say, at least 1,100 children in preschools surrounding in our city. We meet with those preschool providers or the director to talk about transition to kindergarten, but to also coordinate and have similar program offerings available to our children. This year, we've been working on creating summer reading for preschool students to make sure they have a summer reading list and some summer reading activities, activities they can do at home. We have a wonderful partnership with Read to Grow. Read to Grow is a program in Branford, and they actually provide to Bridgeport Public Schools 2 home visitors. Those home visitors are based in Marin School and Bryant. And so those home visitors not only work with the preschool children at like Classical is in proximity to Bryant and Marin is in proximity to Hallen. The home visitors go to the homes of the young children, the infants and toddlers in those schools to provide reading support, language support. Read to Grow is an awesome partner for us. They provide books to children at no cost. And they recently opened a bookmobile that I hope to capitalize on, where the bookmobile can pull up to the school. Parents, children can get on and get free books. I know Beardsley School will have the bookmobile at their end of the year, like PBIS celebration. I know Hallen will do the same opening the year. So just getting the news out about the bookmobile, not just for preschool, but for the district. We just revised the report cards to make them more parent friendly. The preschool teachers met and they didn't like the report card. They said the parents didn't understand it, so a revision occurred after launching last year. There's a revision this year in preparation for next year. There was a question about family resource centers. Each school does not have a family resource center. I believe Dunbar, Battaglia, and Roosevelt definitely have family resource centers, and they have staff that work with families. Originally, during the pandemic, those family resource centers provided additional programming to children during the summer. We have some school-based health centers that we tap into to make sure families have access to dental, vision, hearing, and vaccinations. And we do purchase Footsteps to Brilliance, which is a digital program available to all preschool students.
Delay.
We did purchase a program, Footsteps to Brilliance. It's basically a literacy program. It's available in English and Spanish. It is not available in the other languages of families we serve. It is a great program that's available to not just Bridgeport Public Schools families, but to preschools throughout the city of Bridgeport.
All right. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm going to start with Ms. Cashmere, since this was her item. Ms. Cashmere, does this answer the questions you may have had for this particular department? Ms. Cashmere? I'll come back to her. Go ahead, Mr. Traver.
Yeah, on the last Footsteps to Brilliance program that you were just discussing, you said that's available to the providers throughout the city.
Yes.
How would a parent go about finding out about it?
Well, one of the challenges when Therese McGuire, departed the city, we haven't had someone to leverage it. So one of the ways when we start back with it is through an app, like they scan on their phone and sign up. The preschool provider or the classroom teacher provides a code that they would enter. So the families could use the program on their phone without internet. So no Wi-Fi or internet is necessary.
But if they did, they would go to the Bridgeport Public School website and could access it or find out about it, or how would that?
Well, for all the children in Bridgeport Public Schools, they have access.
No, I'm talking about the
Community.
what I assume you're talking about, which is the ones who are not in our programs yet,
Correct.
but our 2 or 3 year old child here in Bridgeport.
Right. So we would need to partner with the providers. So Therese,
Only through the providers.
right now, yes, it would primarily be through the providers, because the providers would have to get on the computer and print out an individual code for each family. That once they scan the QR code, they would need something to type in, like an authenticator, like a number. So that's why we must partner with the providers so they can give their families the authenticator code.
Okay.
The reason I'm asking is that I'm thinking of somebody like myself. My daughter goes to a daycare 2 days a week. 3 days a week, she comes to her grandparents' house. And the daycare center is outside the city limits.
Right.
So when or how would she have access, or she be able to access something like that? And I know lots of grandparents in this city who are taking care of their young grandchildren.
That I can get more information for you
Okay,
and
that'd be fine.
provide. But I know that we would need to make sure the person currently filling in can provide that to families.
Yeah.
And so just so you're aware, Ms. Parent and I
All right.
spoke today, and we will be interviewing for the position as
Oh,
well.
gosh, it sounds like a valuable service, maybe something we can do in conjunction with the public library and their new branches, and just sort of
Excellent.
make it a service available for people in the community who are not able to put a child in daycare, or are not putting a child in daycare for one reason or another, but it would be another service. I know the library does great services.
Yes.
My granddaughter goes to several of those. So it just would be another option for them.
I will ask the consultant in that department
Great.
to investigate and proceed to put it on the website with summer reading.
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
Ms. Cashmere? See if she, there you go. Would you like to add any comments to Ms. Jenkins' presentation? I saw you unmuted, but I don't hear you.
Like, yeah.
Ms. Cashmere?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you now.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to say how great these presentations are. They don't really jog a lot of questions, which is excellent. Thank you again for the presentation. I just wanted to ask about the background checks, the fingerprints. I understand that there's a backlog that they have, but besides the what do you call them? The first responders, I understand that they're a priority when it comes to fingerprinting, but do they make the teachers a priority? I mean, do they at least try to, have scheduled fingerprints for them within a reasonable amount of time, or just wondering about that?
Well, we were working to purchase our own digital scan. So all the preschool teachers have been fingerprinted, even beyond their original employment. But the state made a decision, and not just the state, the federal government made the decision to make sure they were digital. So I want you to know, like, everybody's fingerprinted, everyone's background checked, but they made a change.
Yeah.
And the change was digital. So it backlogged because the police department takes priority. So the teachers could go after 2:30.
That's what I have to do.
And they can go to the state trooper barracks, but they must go during the day when they're teaching. So covering their classroom and getting them out has been the challenge. Once we can get our hands on a digital machine, I think that we would be fine. I know that there's a forensic science unit at Sacred Heart University, and they're in the process of getting a digital fingerprint scanner. So in the past, we worked with the forensic science unit at UB to fingerprint, but they don't have the digital fingerprint machine. So the backlog is not just due to access in the police department or state trooper barracks. I think that the change occurred when there weren't enough machines available for purchase. So like some districts, like Milford, they own their own.
Mm-hmm.
We want to buy it, but we're on a wait list
To buy it.
for ordering.
Yeah.
So just know that they could drive like to New Britain or something to expedite it. But not many people have been wanting to drive to get their fingers printing done, which is probably about 45 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm on the alumni board at Sacred Heart University, so if I could do anything to help speed up the process or ask any questions on your behalf, I'd be more than happy to. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presentation is performing arts and visual arts. Well, performing and visual arts. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Good evening. I'm Sarah Jane Henry. I'm the Director of Performing and Visual Arts for Bridgeport Public Schools. I was asked to present about the function of my department and what we do. So I'm just going to go through and share a little information here. Because it's arts, I put some pictures in to include. This was from the Fame Winter Concert. But an overview of the department, we currently have 103 positions in art, music, and theater. It's broken down into K-8 teachers and then high school teachers. Theater is new programming offered in Bridgeport Public Schools. But so I have staff in every school building in the city, which is pretty wonderful. So this evening, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the teaching and learning, the professional development, our community partners, FAME, turnaround arts, and adaptive arts, and I'll get into details about all those. So our current expectations for teaching and learning in the schools are for students in K through 3 to receive a minimum of 1 visual arts and 1 performing arts period a week. In many cases, they get more than that, but that's the basic minimum we've requested from our schools. It's in 4th through 8th, it's a minimum of 2 per week of each. And theater and music can be considered performing arts. So some kids will get 1 theater class, 1 music class, and it meets the requirements there. And then in the high schools, the state changed the requirement that kids need at least 1 credit in arts to graduate. So we have a wide variety of arts and music courses available at the high school.
Sorry,
Yeah.
credit in each?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, it's 1 overall.
Yep.
I apologize if that was
No, I got
confusing. So here's an example of the visual arts class at Fairchild Wheeler in the bio tech school, where they still work thematically, but they've taught color theory to students using organic materials as the subject matter. So as you'll see here, the course offerings that we have are covered by 3 different certifications. So the theater certification is at the state level 485, the general music certification is 049, and then the visual arts is 042. So we have teachers from 3 different certifications in the department. The K-8 work is a foundational skill building work for students, and then in high school, they get a much wider variety. There are some K-8 schools that offer some more choice in the general music realm where there are choirs and that sort of thing, but it's not consistent across the district. It's based on scheduling and staffing. But as you'll see in the high school columns, we've got a pretty extensive variety of coursework that we offer. And one of my goals over the next year or so is to increase access to early college credits and AP courses in the high schools, because it's a great way for kids to graduate with some credit in high school. So, for example, the kids at Harding this week are finishing up their AP portfolios, and it's crunch time for them. They're really excited. So there's good work happening there. There's a ton of research behind the value of arts in the high schools. And, you know, if we're looking at increasing graduation rates and attendance, the arts are certainly a great way or a great vehicle to build that capacity with our students. All our courses are based on the national standards. And the way the national standards are written is they have 4 core components that actually speak to visual arts, performing arts, music, drama, dance, all of them. And within each group, or within each pillar there, the teachers work to align their work. So creating is a clear one that they do in there. And then obviously presenting, producing, and performing is where the variations come in. The kids are supposed to respond to the work they create and then make connections to other life and subjects. Okay, so for professional development goals for this year and an ongoing process, things that we've been working on is really focusing on culturally responsive teaching and anti-racist practices. There has been a lot of conversation in the arts world about what kids study, and a lot of traditional curriculum focuses on older white composers and artists. And so we're really trying to build a database of contemporary artists that match our student demographic, so that we can really show our kids that there are professional practicing artists that look like them, and we can learn from them.
And if I can add,
Please.
Bridgeport is doing a really good job at building the arts community Like I've never seen it the way it has been in the last couple of
Mhm.
years. And I'm noticing I work in New Haven, so New Haven is even more out there with the arts community.
Mhm.
So just the culturally responsive teaching is so big because they're seeing it
Mhm.
every day in
Right.
their own community. So seeing it in school is just as important.
And we've partnered with some organizations. So for example, the BMA Visual Arts class did a walking tour of all the new murals downtown, facilitated by City Lights Gallery.
Yeah.
And so we actually got to meet some of the artists. We went to Housatonic Community College also because it really is an arts-rich community. And for our kids to see that is valuable.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm done.
My daughter graduated from Central a long time ago now, but just loved the arts program here, and went on to be a fine arts major. Will the new reading program that we voted on last night provide more about the biographies of culturally appropriate artists? Would that be a tool that could be used here?
We've actually been discussing ways to formulate cross-curricular collaboration and
Nice.
how we can get the teachers working together to make sure that those sort of things align. So an artist or a musician that they learn about in the art room or in the music classroom may not be taught in a silent. It might connect with an author that they're reading about and that sort of thing. So we've been trying to figure out the best way to schedule it. We're trying. It's on our radar.
In my class, social studies protest signs were a part of that,
Yes,
Yeah.
studying the civil rights movement.
Mhm.
So we did that kind of art.
Yeah, absolutely.
the materials on the brain pop, I
Yeah.
had shared in the first presentation about Alvin Ailey, and even mentioning that he was from the LGBT plus community. So students would be exposed not only to artists, and diverse artists, but across the spectrum of, human development.
Well, and beyond what Chairman Brown said about the community, which is, I agree, blossoming with all kinds of opportunity for our kids to get involved in the art community. There's just so much around us in the state of Connecticut. We're about to go see Romare Bearden's exhibit over at Long Island. I mean, there's just so much out there.
Most definitely.
So it's great.
Okay, so we've worked a lot. We're trying to work a bit more on special ed inclusion. So a lot of times when a child is in a self-contained classroom, they are required legally to get time with non-disabled peers. And so a lot of times it happens in specials, which is really wonderful because it is such an inclusive environment. But we're working to make sure that our teacher or my teachers know exactly how to engage with these students and can really meet their needs and differentiate their planning so that the kids can answer the lesson at any level. So that's been important. The LGBTQ plus community is obviously a part of who we are as creative individuals. And so I've been working with the Triangle Center to help train teachers on inclusion and how to work with students and how to create an environment that is accepting. What we are also doing is curriculum alignment, making sure that what's happening in one school matches what's happening in other schools, and the K-12 alignment so ensuring that all second graders learn the skill and are assessed at it. And so it doesn't matter if a child leaves a school and goes to a different school, a third grade art teacher will know what a child has learned in second grade.
Right.
And then that speaks to the equity and access. So our high school programs vary, and I'm trying to build capacity in the staff so that if you want to take digital music, the teacher at Harding is highly qualified. Central hasn't got a program. So we need to create that program here at Central and make sure that regardless of the neighborhood a student lives in, they have access to that kind of thing.
Good. It's really good.
Thanks. A big part of our work is community partnerships, and I'm sorry it's so little. This is, a short list of people we work with. There are definitely more that we partner with in varying capacities. But it really is wonderful. As you said, there is such a rich community of artists now that a lot of people want to help and support us. For example, the Bassick Theatre program was just at Fairfield U on Friday, watching a play and having an artist talk back with the actors, which was a really rich experience for them. And Fairfield U provides tickets to the community frequently. So I'm sure you get the Parent Square notifications. The Greater Bridgeport Symphony has helped us fix a bunch of our instruments. They did a live rehearsal here at Central on the stage so the kids could come and enjoy it. So we're trying to build more of people coming into our schools, but also kids going and experiencing the arts.
One I might suggest, it could be here, maybe I'm overlooking it, is that perfect example, music is art. The Arena has some of the most, like, I didn't even know the Temptations, like, my Temptations compared to what Temptations I saw, I was like, whoa,
Right.
because my generation, you know, we know the BET version of the Temptations, but there's like seriously, but there's a rich history there. And I know that, you know, that could be something that part of what, you know, companies like that come into our city should be willing to allow students that opportunity to see that, just, you know, see that on display, because, you know, what they're trying to do is show that variety.
Sure.
But you can't do that if you're missing a whole generation of those that are living it. You know, so I just thought about that because I was blown away. I was like, what? There's two sets of Temptations? You know?
Yeah, the Arena is providing a really rich musical experience. The tricky thing with that is it's usually in the evening. So getting kids there, it would need to be with family. We did collaborate with them on Sound on Sound, and we had student artwork displayed there. They published it. We're working with Park City Music Hall to do some digital lighting and see what it takes to put on a show. But once again, a lot of times shows happen outside of school hours. And I'm not saying it's a barrier, but we're working to get through it.
I had you mentioned repairing instruments. I know 5-10 years ago, this was a huge problem. We had closets full of broken instruments here and nobody to fix them.
We still do. What we've done over the last 2 years with some COVID relief money is teachers have the opportunity to drop them off here. We have got a music an instrument repair person who comes in and he takes them, he has had to cannibalize some of the instruments that are not, but he uses parts to fix the others, which has been good. So it's an ongoing process. It's kind of slow, but we have enough instruments that I'm very confident that if a child does not have access to one, we can find it.
I'm assuming from the way you said that this is an outside contractor.
It is.
Because we used to have actually an employee.
Oh, well, that would be nice.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Again, I'm trying to build my case for all the things we would like to have.
We need money.
If we had the
But
money. Right.
yes. And we with some of the COVID relief money, we have been able to assign quite.
Our concern is that's why about to disappear. So,
but we've got them in
we're
working
gonna
order for
argue
now.
about what kinds of things our kids would,
Agreed.
would make their education.
Basic maintenance, tuning pianos every year.
Yeah.
That sort of thing is things that we need. Okay, so that's the community partners. All right. Here is definitely a bright spot. For me, FAME opened last January. FAME is an after-school arts academy open to all high school students in Bridgeport Public Schools. We offer a very wide variety. There's visual arts, theater, band, drumline, audio, visual technology, and we're actually expanding to have costume design and sewing. So the kids come 3 days a week over to Harding. We bus them from all the standing high schools, and they have an arts experience 3 days a week. The kids are highly committed. They're really wonderful. A lot of our AP students choose to come to FAME also for that extra studio time in the arts. We put on a great production of The Lightning Thief this year. That was very successful. We had a significant increase in audience turnout in comparison to last year, which is great. We were able to bring 16 middle schools to come watch the shows during the day. So the Harding Auditorium was full, it really has been a great program. It's wonderful. We worked with Five Fingers, a local muralist, to do the mural at FASIC on Fairfield Avenue, the big Create mural that the kids designed. So FAME is definitely a really great program for our kids. It is currently funded through brought money, and I'm going to work to get more money so it is a sustainable program.
Yeah, I know that students at Central are a part of RCA. So, and I think students at Hardin too, but it would blow my mind because my brother went to RCA as well.
Mhm.
But like, it's nothing like going to a program that your peers go to. Because he had friends in RCA, but just imagine,
Different.
you know, it's a different atmosphere, different group of students. And not
Right.
saying that we don't want our kids to be well-rounded, but
Sure.
like, it's different when you're home, you know, your own
Right.
community.
Part of your community. We've had multiple students reach out from non-Bridgeport public schools to try and attend. So Bullet Havens has reached out to send kids, and at this stage, we are not accepting them because it's funded with our money. The previous superintendent and I, we discussed potentially charging a fee if an outside student would like to, if a City of Bridgeport student would like to attend but doesn't attend our public schools. So
Mhm.
there, we hadn't settled on where we land with that. The digital audio production part of it has come along really nicely. The Harding Auditorium has been updated and everything is working, and the kids are designing all the lights and doing all the shows, which is a great skill and a transferable skill into a job.
There was a program in the summer at Wesleyan. Is that still there? It was an arts program.
I
The
believe,
state
I
paid
believe
for
it was, I've heard
I
about
know
this.
we used to be able to send 20, 30, 40 kids
So
up there. My daughter went in photography.
that's funny because the Central High School teacher mentioned it to me. I don't believe it is, I think it was stopped during COVID. I have not been heard.
Okay.
I can reach out and see what
It was a
they,
great program, kids from all over the state and multiple
You said
different
Wesley?
districts.
yeah.
It was at
University.
Wesleyan. It was a couple of weeks. They stayed in the dorms. They were like the kids that played those Southeastern Asia
Yes.
songs.
I know the,
Alabama ding
yeah.
dongs. There were the, symphony, and there were jazz bands, and there were, my daughter did photography. There were, my painters, and just all the ways.
one of the teachers has asked me about that, and they have not released any information about it. And it could be a product of COVID, but I can certainly reach out and see if it's back on offer. Okay.
And it went for free.
Yes,
The
right.
kids were- it was
Everything.
Paid for, yeah.
So we also are part of the Turnaround Arts Network of schools, it started 10 years ago under the Obama administration for arts engagement in the schools. And it has now been taken over by the Kennedy Center. We have 5 schools, as you can see, Barnum, Bryant, Hall, Helen, and Roosevelt, that are all part of the Turnaround Arts program. They receive extra professional development. They can apply for some grants to do murals and arts engagement work in their schools. Last year, we did a great group PD about developing empathy through the arts and how we can teach our kids to be more empathetic to each other through the arts. And so we had some good consultants come in to do that. They have national conferences where they invite our teachers to attend at discounted rates. They're a great support to us. And there are some pictures of the teachers engaging and the student doing her project.
Is this the program that originally brought in artists
Correct.
specific?
It started where you had a celebrity.
Bernie Williams at Tisdale,
Right.
yes.
Exactly. So it started with a celebrity artist.
Right.
They've kind of moved away from that, but it was a good way for them to start the program and get funding and that sort of national support. Okay, and now we have an adaptive arts program in the district. Well,
One of
a
my
pilot.
favorites.
Say again?
It's one of my favorites.
Me too. So last year, I proposed an adaptive arts teacher to the superintendent and got approval for it with the funding. So we currently have a special education teacher with an arts background serving our students at Skane and at Barnum in the self-contained classrooms. And our data, as you can see, and I'll explain. So the focus of the work was to build language skills for students on the autism spectrum and their OT skills, their fine motor skills. And as you can see in the data collected by our teacher from September through April, the spontaneous language is developing at Skane beautifully, and the tool usage is happening. And then at Barnum, we're seeing similar results. The Barnum tool usage, the data started off so high because it's a K-8 school. So a lot of the kids had some of the tool grip skills and the crossbody movement and that sort of thing before the arts. But the feedback from the kids and the teachers has been really strong. We've had 2 very successful events. For adaptive arts, we did one at Barnum and one at Skane. We got a great write-up in the Connecticut Post from the one at Barnum. And then we did an engagement day for parents at Skane during the school day. And it was a lot of fun. They came in and the kids are just so happy and so proud of what they're doing. So it is definitely a highlight. That teacher position is paid for through the grant. And so I am working to solicit funds from private organizations. I'm finding it's hard to get funding for a teacher. A lot of people will support programs and supplies, but actually paying a teacher's salary is tricky.
Yeah.
So that's the arts department. Can I answer any questions?
I'm gonna go to Ms. Cashmere first. Ms. Cashmere, any thoughts on this presentation?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, definitely great presentation. I just think about how disgusting it is that it's so hard to get funding for arts programs when they're almost just about as important as academic. And what I mean by that is, when a child can't express themselves academically, that's where you have the other option with the arts. And I mentor a 17-year-old who has cognitive delays. She's not in Bridgeport Public Schools. She's in another district, but she has a beautiful voice. She has a beautiful singing voice. I mean, she sings like an angel, and so I say to her, okay, so what do you want to do? Let's talk about the future. What do you want to do after high school? I want to be a rapper. Like, oh, I said to myself, oh my God, a rapper. So I'm not anyone to crush anybody's dreams, especially not hers. But I said, you're gonna need to know all of the academic stuff that you're learning in order to become a rapper if you break through the industry like that. So, it's just like one example of, so many kids that if they just had a chance to express themselves more across all of the arts, not just music, but poetry, film, all that other stuff, comedy even. I just think that it's really, really disgusting that, the funding isn't there and it's such a struggle. So that's all the comment that I had, but I understand how important the arts are. And thank you for the presentation. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I just want to make the observation that I'm assuming life hasn't changed. That if you had the resources, you could be providing a lot more besides fixing instruments, supplies to the art teachers to do even more creative work than they're already doing.
Right. So we have a per pupil allocation each year for supplies, which teachers make work. Over the past couple of years through the grant, we have been able to replace instruments and build programs and really get the department where it should be. And so I'm grateful for the funds that have been made available. They've brought us up to where we should be. Maintaining is going to be the hard part.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I have no further comments. I think I said enough. Thank you both for sharing. Thank you to Ms. Johnson as well for sharing. And we'll continue for anyone that's watching. We'll continue. We have two more opportunities for staff to provide presentations. And we encourage parents to come out, hear the different presentations. But thank you, ladies, for joining us. And at this moment, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Traber. I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and we'll see you next month.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Fine arts saved my life here at the school.